Good morning, everyone. Thank you. And welcome to this place of joy and wonder as we perch on the edge of the holiday season. Welcome to this celebration of dance, song, and togetherness. And as you have often heard me say, welcome to this place of light and love, a most special place, a most special space. Within these walls, all are truly welcome and safe. Here, peace is found, joy celebrated, sorrow shared. And while our church is beautiful, it becomes sacred because you are here. Thank you for adding the blessing of your presence to this day. Magical as the holiday season may be, we know that this is also an incredibly demanding time of year, and we recognize too that this season challenges many for differing reasons. This makes a gathering like today even more special, as our hearts are filled and maybe even healed a bit by the gift of song, dance, and chosen words. To all who have helped bring us a lovely service this day, and there are many, our gratitude. My name is Mary Jean, a little hoarse, a little coldy just now, but as always, very honored to be part of today's service. And however you have found yourself here, this community truly means for you to feel welcome. If this is your first visit with us, you would honor us by signing the guest book in the rear of the church, and I promise no salesman will call. You and all who are gathered and warming our pews this morning are invited to come downstairs for coffee hour after the service, and you can find stairs behind the back door or this door here. It's a lovely way of adding to our service. I'll look for you there. And while we adore our choir and all the musical offerings of this day, we would prefer not to hear the music of your ringtone. So kindly take a moment to turn your cell phone off or silence it if you haven't already thought to do so. I started leaving mine in my car years ago because I didn't trust myself remembering. Thank you. Lastly, your order of service is not only today's program, but a guide to all things North Chapel and all the events happening here in between our Sundays together. Make sure you check yours out to be certain you don't miss something you'd like to be part of. And a particular note about the service, it says the dancers are coming back now, but we're giving them a little breathing space and they'll be back in a little bit before chalice lighting. Any announcements? Nobody spoke to me about any, so I'm thinking not. Okay, so how about if we sing? Today's opening hymn is number 226. What are you pointing to? Sorry. Oh, an announcement. Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't see you come up. Yeah, come on up. Thank you. I saw everybody pointing, I was like.
Hi, it has been brought to my attention that there is actually an error in the order of service, that there will be a Sunday 10 a.m. service. Is that correct, Leon? Yes. So yeah, it says that there is only one service for Christmas Eve, but just to be clear, because Christmas Eve is on a Sunday, there will be a 10 a.m. service. So I just because my husband and I were like, wait a minute, is there 10 a.m.? What's going on? So there is actually a 10 a.m. service if anyone wants to go to 10 a.m. service. Just wanted to make it quick. Because I was confused. I thought somebody else might be too.
I was like, what in hell, Leon? What now? These opening words have no known author. On a Christmas card I received more than 40 years ago, they meant enough to me that that very card comes out every year and is perched where my eyes are often reminded of its sentiments. After listening, let's take a bit of time, shall we, to bring ourselves into this moment. Leave the lists, the shopping, the menu planning, and all the hustle and bustle behind, and simply be here for a little bit. This Christmas, mend a quarrel, seek out a forgotten friend, write a love letter, share some treasure, give a soft answer, encourage youth, keep a promise, find the time, forgive an enemy, listen, apologize if you were wrong, think first of someone else, be kind and gentle, laugh a little more, express your gratitude, gladden the heart of a child, take pleasure in the beauty and wonder of the earth. Speak your love. Speak it again. Speak it still once again.
Charles Eliot, from late in the 19th century to early in the 20th century, was president at Harvard for many years and moved the medical school to its current location, if I'm not mistaken, and established standards that would remain in place throughout Harvard's years. One of those standards, let's just say those are the standards by which we still live today. I bring his name up now because Charles Eliot was, I think, brother to Samuel Atkins Eliot, who was a Unitarian minister at the time, from a family that had a lot of Eliot ministers, one of whom was the minister of Unity Church in St. Paul, Minnesota, where I served for 4 years and where I was ordained. And I was ordained in Frederick May Eliot's robe. So it's just a history that I'm happy about. The Eliot's Unitarian Universalism and its connection to Harvard. I'd like to begin this morning with a quote from a young woman named Anne Frank. She wrote, "In spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart. I simply can't build up my hopes on a foundation consisting of confusion, misery, and death, I see the world gradually turning into a wilderness. I hear the ever-approaching thunder, which will destroy us too. I can feel the sufferings of millions, and yet I look up to the heavens, and I think that all will come out all right. That this cruelty too will end, and that peace and tranquility will return again. Anne Frank. Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. Today is Sunday, December the 17th, and the title of this morning's reflection is Holiness and Harvard Medicine and Mercy. The medicine that I'm talking about here, just to be clear, is grace. This is a more theological service. It's more small c conservative, and it's a little bit deeper, and it's a little bit more dangerous. It is a dangerous reflection for a dangerous Christmas time. Scripture teaches us that God is mindful of the humble, distant from the proud, and helpful to his servant Israel, son of Isaac. God encouraged Israel to be merciful to the children of Abraham. Abraham had 2 children, Isaac, born of Sarah, and Ishmael, born of Hagar. 2 sons born of different mothers. It wasn't scandalous. Not the birth, at any rate. It got scandalous later. It got pretty scandalous, and we are making it spectacularly scandalous, even as we speak. It's an ancient struggle for the descendants of these 2 sons, these 2 blessed half-brothers. They found themselves and still find themselves in conflict, a conflict that did not belong to them. As a wise storyteller named Abigail Bartlett reminds us, God said to Abraham, "Look towards the heaven and number the stars, and so shall your heavens be." So shall your descendants be. But Abraham's wife, Sarah, wasn't getting any younger, and God wasn't coming through on his promise. Sarah was getting older, and she was getting nervous because she did not have any children. So she sent Abraham to the bed of her maid, Hagar, and Abraham and Hagar had Ishmael. Not long after they did, God kept his promise with Sarah, as he always intended to do, and Abraham and Sarah had Isaac. And Sarah said to Abraham, "Cast out this slave woman and her son, for the son of a slave woman will not be heir with my son." And so it began. The Jews, son of Isaac. The Arabs, son of Ishmael. Concluding the story, she said, "What people find most important to remember is that in the end, the 2 sons came together to bury their father." So like I said, it's a more theological service. It's a little bit deeper and a lot more dangerous. Because Harvard and MIT and the University of Pennsylvania find themselves in a related conflict today. I hope you like this service. It invites your soul to dance, I hope. We need that now. We need that grace and that beauty, that gentleness, that artistry. I hope that you find yourself inspired, and I hope that you find yourself amazed. I hope these things, because when we find inspiration and when we find amazement, we are usually on the good path that leads to good things in life. Chicago sings about this feeling of being inspired when they sing, "You know, our love was meant to be. The kind of love that lasts forever." I make no apology for the cheesiness of this part of the sermon. I had a plan to have a block of cheese that I would present. I was going to put a little bow on it. And I want you here with me, they continue, from tonight until the end of time. You should know everywhere I go, you're always on my heart, in my mind, in my soul. You're the meaning in my life. You're the inspiration. I want to have you near me. I want to have you hear me saying, no one needs you more than I need you. And Paul McCartney sings about amazingness when he sings, maybe I'm amazed at the way you love me all the time, and maybe I'm afraid of the way I love you. Maybe I'm amazed at the way you help me sing my song, you right me when I'm wrong, and maybe I'm amazed at the way I really need you. Now, to be clear, Paul McCartney was singing a love song for his wife. Her name was Linda, and she was totally amazing. And Chicago, from what I gather, was singing about a ferociously talented elderly Japanese man named Mr. Miyagi, a winsome character in a 1980s film called Karate Kid Part 2, with Ralph Macchio, who was totally cheesy and who I was totally jealous of. Now, as a theologian, however, I am overly analytical and stubborn. I am loath to forfeit an opportunity to see the holy everywhere around me. So this is what I've learned over the years, and this is what people like Peter Mayer have taught me and have led me to see the world. Peter Mayer is a poet and a musician. I learned from him, from his poetry, as so many have learned from him. From his own life experience, from his own theology, he wrote these words. When I was a boy each week, on Sunday we would go to church and pay attention to the priest, and he would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread. And everyone would kneel and bow. Today, the only difference is that everything is holy now. He wrote, wine from water is not so small, but an even better trick is that anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but finding where there isn't one. This idea is central to my theology. It's central to my musicology. It's at the core of my life. Seeing, searching for, striving to see the sacred in all things. It sounds cute, but you should try it, because it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. Because it doesn't only mean searching for the sacred in Paul McCartney songs, which isn't hard at all, or in Chicago songs, which is a little tougher, or in Mr. Miyagi's character in Karate Kid Part 2. It means searching for the sacred in the broken heart of the world, in Ukraine, in Gaza, in Israel. Beneath the social life, reactivity, and the culture war propaganda, there are things that are real and beautiful to be found. It takes real courage to look for such things. It takes real courage to find them, to get to know them, and to come to love them. And that's the big part of our job in this short time here on earth, mustering the might, summoning the courage to get to know the stranger. When you search for the sacred, where do you look first? Some of us look to the churches to see what they can find. A lot of churches look to the Bible, to the lectionary, to lead them on the path of the holy. Do you know about the lectionary? Are people familiar with what the lectionary is? It's no longer common practice in Unitarian Universalism, but the lectionary is a list of portions of the Bible appointed to be read at particular church services. Over the course of a 3-year cycle, the lectionary guides us on a journey through the wisdom of the Bible as is appropriate for each time of year. So every Sunday has a set of prescribed readings. For this Sunday, who practice, the readings are Luke, John, Isaiah, 1 Thessalonians, Psalm 126, when the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dreamed. Our mouths were filled with laughter, our tongues with songs of joy. Oh man, do we need that now? Regardless of our theology, following the lectionary is a tall order. It demands of the parishioner. It delivers a rigor and a spiritual sense of groundedness that we sometimes lack in Unitarian Universalism. UUs get criticized for this, and I think we should accept that criticism, in part, and only to the degree that it is loving. In preparation for this reflection, and for the silent peace vigil that North Chapel hosted late yesterday afternoon, I reflected on a passage from the Gospel. I reflected on the Luke My soul glorifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior, for he has been mindful of the humble state of his servant. From now on, all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me. Holy is his name. Luke says, his mercy extends to those who fear him from generation to generation. He has performed mighty deeds with his arms. He has scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. He has brought down rulers from their throne, but has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, but has sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel, remembering to be merciful to Abraham and his descendants forever, just as he promised our ancestors. Last week, mercy was regarded as a dangerous idea on some college campuses. According to the New Oxford American Dictionary, the word mercy is defined as compassion or forgiveness shown towards someone whom it is within your power to punish or to harm. Okay. In example, the boy was screaming and begging for mercy. In example, the mercies of God. As campuses erupted in powerful protest and demonstration in response to the ongoing war, if you can call it that, in Gaza, chants of ceasefire now were reverberating off regular league and Ivy League walls. That's a little joke. Perhaps a very little joke. Regular league and Ivy League. I'm joking because I wonder about the usefulness of the distinction, particularly in times like this. Please forgive me if you find this offensive. Please forgive me if I am joking about something that is incredibly dangerous. A situation that is not funny at all. It is simply not a laughing matter. And at the same time, our logic can't make sense of it. So laughing sometimes is the only thing that's left. I say war, if you can call it that, because once again, according to the New Oxford American Dictionary, the word war is defined as a state of armed conflict between different nations, or defined as a state of armed conflict between different states or between different groups within a nation or a state. Gaza is not a nation, is not part of a nation, and Gaza is not a state and is not part of a state. On October 7th, however, it struck Israel as if it were. I argue language here in abject desperation. I want to make sense of all the violence, and I cannot. The reach of war is beyond my language and beyond my understanding. It is much more than I can hold. I just can't wrap my arms around it. I can't even wrap my mind around it, my heart, my soul, my prayer. I can't even speak, and when I try, I sound so naive and so idealistic. But that will have to do, because that's all I have. So I try and I fail a lot, but I do so with integrity, and to hell with my many judges, almost all of them who reside within me. In spite of myself, I'm going for it anyway. And if I fail, so be it. You know what Teddy Roosevelt says about this kind of thing, right? He says, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong have stumbled, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, and who, at best, knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. So many of us have learned to fear failure in life, and we need to get over that. One of the many good things about music and about creative expression in general is that failure is an absolute certainty. It's how we learn. And the same is true of life. which is why things like grace and forgiveness are so important. We do the best we can, and when we fall down, which happens sometimes, we get ourselves back up again. We stay true to ourselves, not true to the rarefied, idealized, and curated versions of ourselves. True to our actual selves. That's integrity. Actual integrity. Integrity is an actual thing. It is as awkward and as messy as we are. It is honest, it's sincere and vulnerable, achievable. We can hold it in our hands. Integrity is miraculous, and we can hold it in our hands. We can hold it in our hands if we've been honest with ourselves and with one another, because integrity is not proud, integrity is humble. It's merciful, it isn't fake. Integrity isn't never falling down and never giving up on one story about yourself that you don't even believe. Integrity is lifting up and holding down as well as we can, each to our gift, lifting up and holding down the stories about ourselves that we do actually believe, the stories that are true, and pushing the boundaries of those stories, daring the edges of those stories, the ones that make us who we are, the stories that showcase how we feel about ourselves and one another. One has to take a hard look for such stories. One has to look at oneself. And there it is, helping us to sing our songs and righting us when we are wrong. Where does one find such a holy thing as this? One might look to the churches, to the synagogues, the mosques, the houses of worship. One might look to nature and to the wilderness, or to the sacred beauty of the world in which we live. Or if one is smart enough, I suppose, and if the picture on the cover of our orders of service is any indication, one might look for holiness at Harvard University. It sounds a little outlandish, but it's true. It's long been true. Harvard is a complicated place. Many have had the temerity to search for the sacred there. Ari Goldman tried in 1985. He left his job at the New York Times and moved to Cambridge to study at the Harvard Divinity School. That endeavor resulted in a book called The Search for God at Harvard. Apparently, and this I quote, in his year at Harvard, Goldman found to his surprise that fellow students were not the straight-laced, somber clerics, but diverse, vibrant, and sometimes embattled group from every major religion, united by their deep spiritual commitment. Even more surprising was the spiritual climate of the Divinity School itself. Far from being an ivory tower or a bastion of old-time Christian piety, the school was a forum for passionate debate on the relationship between religion, politics, social mores, and sexuality. Goldman concluded, however, that God was not very evident at Harvard. His search came up more on the empty side, and his book, to this effect, came out and said just that in 1992. 15 years later, in 2007, Kelly Monroe Kullberg responded in kind. She wrote another book, she edited it, actually, that further explored and further expanded on Goldman's earlier idea. She called it Finding God at Harvard. It is a book that contains essays from a wide range of people, some of them Harvard graduates, some of them not. Robert Coles, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Elizabeth Dole, Owen Gingrich, the Harvard astronomer and also deeply committed Christian, who just passed away this last May, and Mother Teresa. 42 essays and authors in all. It's a good read, one that explodes the myth that Christian faith cannot survive a rigorous intellectual atmosphere. Finding God at Harvard speaks to the emptiness that haunts college campuses across the country these days. The book claims, romantically I think, that this emptiness can only be filled by truth, only by capital T truth, and that's not true anymore in this age of alternative truths. If you've been following the news that is not directly about Israel and Gaza these days, and also not about the ongoing war in Ukraine, you may recall that 3 university presidents were brought before Congress this last week. Presidents Liz McGill from the University of Pennsylvania, Sally Kornbluh from MIT, and Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard University, were grilled by Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, Republican, New York 21st District. The hearing was grueling, more than 5 hours long. These university presidents were asked repeatedly to defend their collective defense of the First Amendment on their college campuses. They were threatened and asked repeatedly, belligerently, to justify themselves on how they could possibly allow such offensive protests to continue on their campuses. They were being pressured by a congresswoman to shut those protests down. President McGill lost her job over this. She resigned. Upon hearing the news, the response from the congresswoman from New York was 1 down, 2 to go. Representative Stefanik was not the only one to use that kind of obsequious vulgarity. It's a commodity now, that kind of speech. Some of us trade on it. Others of us will find a way to rise above. And how do we do that? How do we make that happen? Maybe understanding the nature of the vulgarity. Often it has little to do with whether and how we are offended. Often it has more to do with whether and how we surrender our graces. We shall not surrender our graces. It's important to push the boundary sometimes. Pushing boundaries can be offensive. Still, it is important to push sometimes. But rarely is it important to do so disrespectfully. The Gospel of Luke reminds us that God helped his servant Israel, remembering to be merciful to Abraham and his descendants forever. Be merciful to the descendants of Isaac, born of Sarah, and be merciful to the descendants of Ishmael, born of Hagar. Mercy is a grace. It is a blessing. It is requisite to peace. This is a time of war, and we don't yet understand it. It's a time of war that defies the very definition of the word war itself, and we are broken by it. We are, all of us, broken by it. The nearly 19,000 of us who have lost our lives already in Israel and Gaza. The nearly 10,000 of us who have lost our lives in Russia and Ukraine. The thousands of us who have rallied for peace despite enormous and mounting pressures to stay silent. The hundreds of representatives in Congress who don't really know what to do. The 3 of us who presided and held our ground and lost a job, defending something far more subtle than the dragon that Elise Stefanik was trying to kill. And one of us who drew a sword that she did not know how to use. We are better than this. The average in us is better than this. The ugly in us is more graceful in the presence of mercy and forgiveness. The holy in us is more beautiful in the absence of pride. Some days are hard. Sometimes the sun can't find the morning, but there are other times as well. These are the times when the holidays, when the holy days reveal their meaning. Faith survives, even in a rigorous New England intellectual atmosphere. Professor Harvey Cox tells a powerful story around Christmas time. He tells the story of a man named Father Giancarlo Sivieri, Irish guy. I'm just kidding. Giancarlo Sivieri, he had insisted that only the best intentions were in his mind when he, during the days of Christmas, before Christmas in 2001, he placed a small replica of Osama bin Laden in the Nativity creche outside of his church, the Basilica of the Sacred Heart in the Tuscan city of Grosseto. He cut out a photo of bin Laden from a newspaper and he mounted it on cardboard and positioned it alongside of the wise men, the animals, and the shepherds, Mary and Joseph and the child. Offensive or just vulgar? Vulgar, perhaps, but deeply profound. Father Sivieri's actions did not go unnoticed, continuing, Cox writes. According to the Italian news agency ANSA, A-N-S-A, Complaints poured in to the priest, not only from parishioners and the people of Grosseto, but also from the bishop of the diocese and from the mayor of the town. Father Sivieri said that he was saddened to see that people did not understand the theological message that he was trying to convey, namely that Christ came to earth to redeem every sinner, man or woman, and bin Laden is one of them. Baby Jesus, he continued, did not come for the poetry of Christmas, but to take on himself the sins of the world. This quotation came from a book entitled When Jesus Came to Harvard. Claudine Gay, the president of Harvard, might benefit from reading this story, a story about a Christian, Father Sivieri, who through a story of a faithful Jew, Jesus, recognized the humanity of a sinful man, bin Laden. Harvey Cox wrote this book in 2004. It seems to have become more powerful and more challenging and more disquieting over time. Harvey Cox continues, the article did not say how this unusual retelling of the Christmas story ended, but I suspect that Father Sivieri was removed the offending figure from the nativity crush, which is too bad because he was making an interesting point. He was also making the all too familiar strange and noteworthy, and that's a hard thing to do. Father Sivieri caused quite a stir. In December of 2001, the dust had not settled, the smoke had not lifted from the ground zeros in New York, Washington, Pennsylvania, to say nothing of the ground zeros that are deep within our hearts. And yet, this is the trial of our compassion. This is the test of our faith. This is the dare and the power and the test of Unitarian Universalism. This is the miracle unbound by theology, untethered to religion and free. This is the human extremity of our experience and our witness with which we continue to grapple. Father Sivieri's reading of the Christmas story was radical then and is radical now, but so was the Holy Child. I wonder what the members of the United States Congress would have made of him. Representatives like Elise Stefanik, or representatives like Rashida Tlaib, or representatives like Becca Ballant from the brave little state of Vermont. We are beautiful people in spite of ourselves. We are gracious and merciful. We are inspired and amazing. We truly are. I'd like to close with that idea. It isn't scripture, but it is John Prine, which is just about the next best thing. In spite of ourselves, we'll end up sitting on a rainbow. Against all odds, honey, we're the big door prize. We're gonna spite the noses right off of our faces, and there won't be nothing but big old hearts dancing in our eyes. Stay amazing. Maybe so. Blessed be. And amen. The song of the youth, the Jerusalem Youth Choir, is entitled, I Don't Need a Reason to Love. May we carry that spirit and the grace and the beauty of the dancing morning that we had into our life this week and into our holiday season and into each other's smiles. I hope you join us for coffee. Blessed be. Amen.